Why does a person get turned down for a date and feel it in their chest? Why does being left out of a group conversation produce the same flinch as a slammed finger? Why does someone hear, "We went in a different direction," and feel their stomach drop like they've been shoved? The language people use is telling: heartbreak, crushed, gutted, burned. Not metaphors of sadness, metaphors of injury. But here's the uncomfortable truth. It's not a metaphor. Rejection registers in the brain the same way physical pain does, and understanding why changes everything about how we interpret our own reactions. Social psychologist Naomi Eisenberger conducted a now famous fMRI study using a virtual ball tossing game called Cyberball. Originally created by psychologist Kipling Williams, participants played the simple game inside a brain scanner. At a certain point, the other players stopped throwing the ball to the participant. Complete exclusion, no explanation. The result was striking. The anterior cingulate cortex, a region involved in processing physical pain, also showed increased activity during social rejection. While some researchers interpret this as evidence of a shared pain system, others argue the overlap is partial, and more recent meta-analyses suggest the picture is more complex than initially thought. Rejection doesn't just feel like pain, it activates pain. The brain processes a broken bone and a broken bond using some of the same neural circuitry. Though more recent research suggests there are also important differences in how each is represented. This overlap isn't a design flaw, it's ancient architecture. For most of human history, survival depended on belonging. Separation from a group wasn't uncomfortable, it was lethal. No tribe meant no food, no protection, no reproduction. So the brain wired social connection into the same alarm system as physical threat. Evolutionary psychologists describe this as the social monitoring system, a constant background process scanning for signs of exclusion. Rejection, dismissal, indifference. Each one triggers the same neurological alarm as a hand touching a hot surface. Not because someone is oversensitive, because the system that kept humans alive for millennia doesn't know the difference between exile from a tribe and being ignored at a dinner party. What makes rejection uniquely destabilizing is that it attacks multiple psychological systems at once. Self-worth takes the first hit. Something must be wrong with me. Belonging takes the second. I'm on the outside. Predictability takes the third. I didn't see this coming. Psychologist Mark Leary developed sociometer theory, the idea that self-esteem functions as an internal gauge of social acceptance. When rejection occurs, self-esteem doesn't just dip because someone feels sad. It drops because the gauge is doing exactly what it was calibrated to do, detecting exclusion, sounding the alarm, mobilizing a response. The emotional crash after rejection isn't irrational. It's the sociometer working precisely as designed. Here's where it deepens. Not all rejection lands equally. The same dismissal can devastate one person and barely register with another. Attachment theory explains much of this variation. John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth's research on early bonding shows that the template for how rejection feels gets encoded long before adult relationships begin. Someone with a secure attachment history processes rejection as an event, painful but survivable. Someone with an anxious attachment history processes rejection as confirmation. I knew this would happen. Someone with an avoidant attachment history processes rejection by shutting down, not feeling less, feeling so much that the system disconnects entirely. Same rejection, 3 completely different nervous system responses. Each one learned early, each one automatic. There's another dimension that rarely gets discussed. Rejection doesn't just hurt in the moment, it echoes. Research has found that people can re-experience social pain more easily and more intensely than physical pain. Reliving social rejection reactivates the brain's effective pain regions in a way that reliving physical pain does not. A person can stub their toe and recall it without flinching, but a person can remember being publicly humiliated in middle school and feel heat in their face decades later. Physical pain has a built-in fading mechanism. The body forgets. Social pain has a built-in replay mechanism. The mind remembers the email that never got a response, the friend group that went quiet, the parent who looked away. These aren't just memories, they're neurological re-injuries. Every replay reactivates the circuit. Every adaptation to rejection carries a cost. Some people become hypervigilant. They scan every conversation for signs of withdrawal. Every pause becomes a signal. Every unreturned text becomes evidence. Connection becomes exhausting because the monitoring never stops. Others become preemptively distant. They reject before they can be rejected. They leave before anyone can leave them. They look independent. They feel isolated. Still others perform. They become indispensable, funny, helpful, agreeable. Not because they want to, because the pain of exclusion conditioned them to earn belonging rather than trust it. Hypervigilance, withdrawal, performance. 3 different armors, same wound underneath. Here's the deeper truth. Rejection doesn't hurt because something is broken. It hurts because something is working, an ancient system that equates disconnection with danger. The pain is not a sign of weakness. It's a signal that belonging matters. And it should matter. Humans are not built for isolation. They're built for contact. The problem isn't that rejection hurts. The problem is that people interpret the pain as proof of inadequacy rather than proof of need. A person who feels devastated by rejection isn't fragile. They're wired for connection. And the system protecting that connection doesn't speak in whispers. It speaks in pain. So here's the question. When was the last time you felt rejection? And instead of listening to what it was telling you, judged yourself for feeling it at all? What if the intensity of the pain isn't a measure of your weakness, but a measure of how deeply you're built to belong? And when you understand that rejection activates pain because connection is a survival need, you stop asking why it hurts so much and start asking what that pain is trying to protect.